Oh, modern film discourse. I find it hilarious that I just saw The Wolfman 2025 after doing extensive prep for this movie. I have watched so many werewolf movies in the lead up to this movie because I wanted to be able to rank werewolf films after seeing this newest one. And so it's so funny after seeing so much direct, so many absolutely horrid, low budget, garbage fire, cash grab type films, that I see this movie from Leigh Whannel that actually does endeavor to do something different and to experiment with the Wolfman concept and to try his hand at different themes and to see people give this a 1-star review. Now, I'm not saying you have to love it or that you're going to be over the moon, pun intended, with this Wolfman movie, but I just see a 1-star review or a half-star review from some of the people that I follow on Letterboxd and I think, clearly you never had to sit through Cursed, or you never had to watch The Howling 2, Sturge of the Wolf Bitch, aka The Howling 2, Your Sister is a Werewolf. Or even The Howling 3, The Marsupials. Because once you see those films, you'll understand that this is in no way a 1-star film. So what worked for me about this? Well, one, I really do appreciate that Whannel endeavored to do something fresh, modern, and different with his movie, that he wanted to set his Wolfman apart from the wolf pack, if you will, and he does that with a sort of visual stylistic flair and by also doing a transformation that is unlike any of the ones that I've seen on film to date. Through nifty camera work, color gradation, lighting effects, audio distortion, and even some visual manipulation of his prey's faces, we get the first-hand point of view of our Wolfman in this movie. And also setting this Wolfman apart is that his transformation is so agonizingly slow-paced. It draws on throughout the night, and it's just grueling and torturous for the specimen to undergo. This is not some sort of voluntary lycanthrope, and you really feel for him in his anguish. And it really shows just what that transformation would be like. That if your body was to go from that of a human man to that of a wolf bestial hybrid, that your skeletal structure, your organs, your teeth, all of it would drastically change. That you would have claws piercing through your fingertips. Your skeletal system would have to completely reconfigure and reshape. That it would be absolute hell all wrapped up in a fleshy package. And this movie does a really good job of conveying that through its transformation. And I think Whannel was smart to put a stamp on things with a different type of transformation, because I think he would have paled in any other type of comparison. That if he just did it in a one fell swoop transformation with practical effects like they did in An American Werewolf in London, well, he would surely lose that battle. That's the best transformation of all time, and I don't really see a lot of room to one-up it if you're going to have a character just right there in front of the camera in broad daylight or in natural light just change. We've seen it before. But also, we've seen the Howling transformation before, and that's often lauded as one of the best werewolf transformations. However, after going to see Nosferatu with a modern audience and seeing them cackle and laugh at really inappropriate times, I don't think a werewolf transformation that heavily relies on things like bladder effects would be seriously received nowadays. And then also, this transformation does manage to rely heavily on practical effects. It just slowly does it, and you get to fixate on maybe one aspect of the change at a time, and that works oh so well. And it's such a good idea to go practical, because if this had gone the CG route, then you would have had fans and YouTube critics and prestigious critics alike all panning this thing. So I think he did a good job of being like, what is the opportunity here? What hasn't been done? How do I make my Wolfman different? And how do we make it a visceral but yet empathetic experience for our audience? I will say the cost, though, of going this new route was that I did at times long for the old world gypsy lore, for the iconography you know and expect with a Wolfman tale, things like the pentagrams and the silver weaponry. So although we get a fresh take and we get to do something new, there's still just certain set dressing, if you will, that I expect with the werewolf movie, and I was feeling it was lacking. This movie lacks in a certain atmosphere and setting, and it just feels like a very small world, out in the woods, Western civilization take on the werewolf, and I just didn't find that nearly as compelling. But what was compelling was Christopher Abbott's portrayal of this man. I mean, you really enjoy this guy as a dad. He's very sympathetic. He's a nice person who's just trying to do the best and trying to outrun the sins of his father. And then you just feel so bad for him when things start to go the way that they ultimately do, as is promised with a title like Wolfman. So props to him and props to his wife in this movie as portrayed by Julia Garner. She also does a really great job. The problem for me is there are a few moments where I was left wanting more from the both of them, but it wasn't necessarily the actors' faults. I think they were let down by the script, because there are moments between these two that are in the bit of like a cold marriage, a marriage that's maybe on the rocks, to where as an audience member, you are kind of primed and ready for the quick snarky retort or the snide comment, maybe even a funny line here or there, but instead you just get these cold, blank faces, these muted expressions where they're just kind of blankly staring at one another, and just leaves you wanting more. There's so many moments in this movie where you're like, really, that's the reaction? Can we get more? So you take that and you take a kind of slow, grueling pace that is as belabored as the werewolf transformation itself, and it kind of really makes the movie turn into a slog at times. I do not think this is the sort of late night flick that I have in mind when I think werewolves. I think kind of fun, high octane, quick transformations, blood's flying everywhere, chases maybe, something I can throw on late at night and it'll keep my attention. I do believe if you watch The Wolfman after midnight, you may just fall asleep. And that's not to say the movie is without any scares. There are a few good moments here or there. I just didn't think any of them had enough punch to really become an iconic moment that the movie is like notorious for, or that you will see show up on all-time lists. It kind of just a slow boil, a slow transformation, the occasional gore or thing that you go, oh, well, that's creative, that's cool, but it's not unnerving. It's not disturbing. I'm not necessarily afraid of this Wolfman, and I feel that I'm supposed to feel for him, that I'm supposed to be really saddened for him, but the waters have been made too murky because I talked about the script not giving us enough when it comes to these characters and their engagement. It gives us too much when it comes to themes, and it just gets so muddled that it becomes hard and unclear what this movie is trying to say. That was one of the key selling points of The Invisible Man, was the subtext and the commentary being provided by Whannel within The Invisible Man. But with The Wolfman, it opens up and it feels like you're supposed to kind of really root for Christopher Abbott's character. You're supposed to be sympathetic for him. It seems like the theme is all about the sins of the father. And then somewhere along the way, we abruptly shift and the movie expects us to latch on to Julia Garner after not really giving her anything to work with for the longest time. And the thing goes, no, this is now the character you have to be sympathetic for. You need to root for her. And this is now a story about a survivor of abuse and the defender of a child. And it's like, I don't know. We don't really flesh any of that out. We're kind of racing now to flesh this out. And then the movie ends up bookending on these two kind of adjacent but not necessarily meshing themes. And the whole thing just ends up being hamstrung by it because it's not really comprehensive in its approach. You don't walk away going, wow, what an amazing Biden commentary. That's going to really shape my worldview. This one's going to sit with me. I am intellectually satiated. No, you just go, just kind of a mess. It wasn't worth the slog and the meditation if the arguments were going to be so just blasé. And one last point that I would say is maybe a mixed element. I felt this was a solid horror movie that, like I said, lacked iconic punch. I did appreciate that it did its own thing. It gave us a new type of Wolfman, and that it at least tried for those themes, that it is so very aptly acted. But, and this is where it's very mixed, it feels like Leigh Whannel giving us his greatest hits, to where while you're watching the movie, you go, oh, that's that shot and that's that camera action from Upgrade. Oh, this is the sins of the father, the cyclical nature thing from Insidious, trying to outrun your demons and then them popping up on the next generation. Or you might go, oh, this is that old abuse commentary thing from Invisible Man. And then there's even a kind of gruesome sequence that you go, oh, hey, shout out to Dr. Gordon from Saw. So it just feels like a trip down memory road with Leigh Whannel, and I don't think we're far enough into his career as a director to really be doing that type of thing and getting away with it. I would like to have a Wolfman movie that felt completely fresh, and instead I got one that just to me was middling. For everything that I really enjoyed, there were elements that left me wanting more. For every stylistic choice that really worked for me, there's maybe a choice that didn't work for me quite so well. And I think the movie's going to prove very divisive because it's going to come down to things like how much do people take away from that transformation? Do they feel those practical effects, which I enjoyed, stand up to films like The American Werewolf in London? Or even the look of the werewolf. He's very much a wolf man in this, and I don't want to spoil too much about him and his metamorphosis. I like the design. I think it makes sense the way that he was transformed and what he finally ends up looking like. I think it looks like a man whose DNA has been spliced with that of a wolf, and I thought it looked just like it would be an awful fate to live out and endure, and I felt bad for him in that way. So he had my sympathy in that way. But I don't know that everyone else is going to necessarily feel that way. I do think that so much of this film will be divisive. But that being said, not a 1 star out of 5. Go watch Surge of the Wolf Bitch if you think this movie is a 1 out of 5. Go watch The Howling 3 Marsupials if you think this movie is a 1 out of 5. No, I give it a 3 out of 5. To me, it meets the minimum threshold to get a recommendation. I think it does enough new, fresh stuff. I think it has themes that, though muddled, might be something that really works for some folks. And I just think it's all around just a good, solid flick that's going to really work for some folks and maybe leave other people thirsting for just a bit more. So if you enjoyed this video, please hit like, please hit subscribe so you can get all the more content. Like I said, I want to do some more werewolf content. I didn't watch all those movies for nothing, so be on the lookout for that and all sorts of other great horror content here as we move on through 2025. I'm Nate for natemareflix, and I say have yourself a wonderful day, and that's a wrap.